At HARP, episode number 150. Today, we're going to be talking about how to expand listening to yourself. Expanded listening, the key to self expression. I'm Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian psychoanalyst in North Carolina, in the US. I'm here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, an artist, a creative, a mentor, a coach. We both play the harp, and that's why we call this Jung at Harp. Almost every week, we come together to have a live conversation to explore questions. So we start with questions, we don't come with answers, and we open up to see what might emerge. We listen deeply to see what the self, the cosmos wants to bring forth and help us both see, and hopefully you see. And if you're watching live, hopefully you're on a platform where if you want to join in the conversation, you can put your comments into a chat box and we'll be able to see them and they'll be a part of our conversation. So, Deborah, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. I mean, I suggested this topic today for a bunch of reasons. We've been talking about a grounded expansion because that's the quarter. That's what we're looking at in this quarter in what I'm teaching in Hip Harp Academy, where I teach improvisation and self-expression through the harp. Also, I wanted to talk about this because it's something that I'm looking at, because one of my coaches has asked me to have an expanded listening of myself. And so I'm looking at what that means. And I'm looking at how, and she's talking about, and share that expanded listening of myself, both with myself and with others. And you and I have been talking a lot about how knowledge limits, trying to come into our conversations here with knowledge of like, well, I know how this works. That just limits. And going into doing anything, trying to do it right or trying to know everything about it, that just limits us. But going in with curiosity expands. So I want to think about, curiosity when I think about myself. And I know that curiosity is one of my strongest points. It's something that's always there. It makes me want to have these conversations with you, coming in with the power of curiosity rather than the power of trying to get something right. So I wanted to look at what is expanded listening of myself and even of the instrument. And one of the things I've been away for 3 weeks. I've been in Europe. My harp has just been sitting here. I came back. It's completely out of tune. And so I was thinking, what's the difference if I could come here and I could say, well, this is completely out of tune. Like that is completely out of tune. And I could be like, whoa, that's wrong. I got to tune it. Or I could come and think, wow, this is something I will never experience this specific tuning again. What does this open up to me? Look like, what happens if I put a harmony underneath it and then I listen to it? What happens if I just listen to the out of tuneness? What do I hear? What can be my expanded listening of what actually is, not the way I think it should be? So I can use the instrument and the condition that it's in right now to think that way. And then I can also then apply it to myself. I can look at everything I think I'm doing wrong, or that I don't have this yet, or I need to do this, or blah, 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 blah. Or I could have an expanded listening of what actually is right now and how I actually am right now. What does that mean? How could I utilize the instrument? Like if I made a practice, right now or later on after we get off, of spending 5 minutes just playing the harp out of tune and finding out how it integrates or what stories it brings up or what it opens up, that practice I don't know what it would do, what it might do later on in the day, what it might open up for me. So I'm looking at all these things, like what what practices might I bring in that would expand my listening of myself? And what does it mean? What does it mean to expand my listening of anything? So what do you think about that?
Gosh, I have lots of thoughts about that. Now I've got to decide which one to bring forth. You know, when you uh, played and that got to that out of tune, what I felt in my body, the knowing that it brought to me about me in this moment, is there is something of my larger sense of who I am and how I move in the world and how I believe what I can do, what I can't do, that's changing. So that out of tune note to me very much resonated and felt like an embodied knowing of, oh, yeah, this is what it's like when something at a higher, more expanded sense of myself is changing.
Mm.
And so my mind then went to the difference between knowledge as intellectual knowledge and book learning and knowledge as embodied knowing. And of course, you all know by now I have a passion for embodiment and have the online embodiment circle where for the first 6 months, we're working with very simple, seemingly mundane practices like a body scan for a month. That's the practice to spend 10 or 15 minutes in the morning, 10 or 15 minutes in the evening doing a body scan. Then the second month, we move to relaxation. Then we move to rhythmic breathing. There are things that are so simple, we forget the power of connecting with the larger whole self when we listen deeply. Because ultimately, all of the embodiment practices are a deeper listening to what's happening inside of one's own body mind. And I could talk about that in terms of Jung's model of the psyche and the various levels of consciousness. And I mean, there are lots of structures by which we could talk about it. But ultimately, it comes down to listening to what's happening in our own body mind. And how does that inform us? And where does that take us? Because the totality of who we are, the largesse of who we are as a divine essence or as a soul or as a psyche, whatever your belief system is there, the word you would use, is contained within. It's not out here and
Mm.
learning something, but it is within. And,
Mm.
so for me, whatever I'm doing in life, and this is so true for me at the heart, when I am playing a tune where I am playing it from the depths of my own being in a way that resonates with me and where I am in the moment, it's so much more beautiful than when I'm playing it like I think I should because this is how the
Mhm.
other, this is how Irish harpists play it, or this is how this person did it, or whatever. It's a very different self-expression when it is emanating from a connection that comes from listening to what's happening deep, deep inside, meaning deep in the body, deep in one's muscular
Mm.
tonicity, deep in one's breath, which is the connection between the limited self and the universal breath,
Mhm.
um, and on and on. So I'm going to stop there.
Well, so much came about to me as you were speaking. So I was thinking, first of all, who's to say that something's out of tune? I mean, this is a convention. It is something that we accept, that this is tonality, and there's a bunch of rule. It allows us to do certain things, and then something out of tune is a different. It's just a different tonality. It's a different experience, and I may not know how to engage with it at first. It may just seem like an effect, like, this is an effect, that's an effect. And at first it's just like, well, just do it. I'm just going to do it. And then later I start to be able to be artistic with it, or find out, how to be self-expressed with it rather than just having it be an effect. So, so that was the first thing, was who's to say who has said it's out of tune, and what is it out of tune with? The next thing I thought as you were speaking is I started thinking about a lullaby. I started thinking about my mother singing a lullaby. And there was no time at which my mother was trying to sing a better lullaby. There was no, and the lullaby, her top hit of lullaby was, ah, baby, ah, baby. That was it. Like there was nothing, no other words, nothing. But I mean, that one thing is so connective, is just so. And I'm thinking, and so I started thinking about that. And then I started thinking about, in the strings of passion or creative resonance, one of the 7 strings is the string of practice. Practices and practicing. And in practicing, you have to be bad to be good, because you have to go through that. But taking on a practice, what I heard you talking about was taking on a simple practice of a body scan, which could be 10 minutes long, it could be 5 minutes long, it could be 2 seconds long. And it made me think again of what I was thinking before, of just taking on the practice of playing something completely out of tune and hearing it as opening up a new door. That could be a practice in which I don't know what I'm going to get from it. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to open up something. And that's what I heard in your practices. And then finally, I thought about something that I really loved. Someone in the academy who was, so in Hip Harp Academy, there's some people who are starting harp as adults, but there are also recovering classical players, people who came in and, got to high levels in conservatories and burned out because it can become toxic. And one of them started taking out her old music and playing it, these virtuosic things that are like, but super slow. And I knew these pieces, and I had such a powerful experience listening to them slowly. It was like suddenly it opened up, like seeing a rose opening up, or seeing, and I know she was resistant to keep doing it. And yet I just wanted to hear it over and over and over and over again. Hear her open up everything like that. So these were all the things that I thought of. I'm not sure where they fit into expanded listening, but I think they fit in terms of taking on a practice that is accepting of what is. That's number one. Being able to see the beauty in something. Okay, now I see what it is. I see how these things are related. To be able to see the beauty in something that you could easily say, that's wrong, that's too slow, that's nothing, that's out of tune.
Yes, and what I'm hearing you, expanded listening means we have to slow down. Now, that doesn't mean we have to play slow, but it means we have to be able to register what we're sensing. You know, our unconscious, our subconscious self picks up so much during the day that our ego consciousness never registers because there's so much coming at us.
Mm-hmm.
So to listen deeply for self-expression requires sifting through, sorting the voices, and it requires having the bandwidth to register, which for me requires slowing down. And I don't think that's just me. I think it requires all of us slowing down. And in a practice, whether it's a practice of I'm going to do scales for 5 minutes every time I sit down at the harp, or it's the practice of doing the body scan, we slow down. The practice slows down the inner wheels of, oh, I got to get to the next thing. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, what am I going to do with it? And we just let go and drop into doing the same thing over and over, just like your mother saying that one phrase over and over. But it kept changing. It was the same phrase, but it wasn't the same phrase.
Yes,
And
it opened up
yeah,
sleep, or it opened up comfort, or
yeah,
it opened up something.
yeah.
And as you were talking, I was thinking, okay, and what is the value?
Hmm.
What is the value? And I just got back from Europe, and I was really struck by how many people are playing the few pieces that I have published. And I've
Hmm.
been really struggling to publish all my life because I play things I don't know how to write down. And so it's a struggle. And I'm working with a team now to do that. But it was striking to me how many people were playing the pieces that I have published. And
Hmm.
I remember seeing one program where like one piece was on there twice and then another piece. And I was like, wow, this is okay. I mean,
Hmm.
I was, this is great because when I first started playing harp, and I got to a certain point, I was like, okay, where's the material where's the repertoire that
Hmm.
lets me do this? And it didn't exist. And now it exists because I created it. So it's satisfying. I'm like, yay, that
Hmm.
person got to that point and it was there for them. And now they can
Hmm.
express this part of them. So what's the value? And I was thinking as you were talking, somebody was talking this morning about twice in the last couple of days, I've been hearing, what is the value of being an artist?
Hmm.
And and hearing that in this world right now where it feels like there's so much is kind of going awry, or we don't know what's happening, being an artist if actually being present to your artistry without judgment, not like, look at me, I can do this well, but like, okay, I have this instrument and I can open up, there's a door, I can
Hmm.
open up a door with a single finger, tune in tune or out of tune, open
Hmm.
up a door, that is of value.
Yes.
And if we can actually expand the listening of ourselves and what we're doing beyond this is right, this is wrong, this is out of tune, this is it, and let go of all those voices, those
Yeah.
other voices that are shutting it down. And we all know that. We know those voices are shutting it down, but what's the value is, I think the value is that it opens up each time we do it
Hmm.
without judgment and without shutting it down. It opens something up for
Hmm.
others. It
Hmm.
opens up a possibility. It opens up acceptance. It opens up, like, here's a pathway you can also. I don't even know what's here, but here's a pathway. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it opens up the rightness of self expression, regardless of how it fits with the outside world. I mean, it's a valuing of the deep, deep self that we each are, we're each a unique ray. And so the value is, oh gosh, it's permission giving. If I can allow myself to really be who I am and express from my deepest depths, then it gives someone else permission and courage and support to do the same. I mean, that's a lot of what I get when I see people who are really living from their deepest self, and knowing it doesn't fit in a certain way in the world. It inspires me to say, wow, she's being who she is, I can be who I am. There's a place.
Wow, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, I don't know how to describe this. I don't even know what I heard, but I think what I'm so much just went in my head. And one was, well, one was one of my favorite songs. There were bells on the hill, but I never heard them ringing. No, I never heard them at all till there was you. Now, I know that's a love song. I know it's from a musical, but it's also a concept that there is so much that we don't hear or that we don't show of ourselves. There's so much because we're judging it. Well, this isn't good enough, or blah, 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 or somebody's going to say this, or somebody's going to say that. And when I expand my listening beyond those little, blah, 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 they're going to say this and they're going to say that, and I can't bear to hear somebody say this again, and then I'll have to do this. I'm getting in this conversation that expanding my listening to what I hear, whether it exists yet or not, but to hear, to allow it. Like that's what I heard when I first came, to the harp, and this thing that I heard wasn't there. And I did take the trouble to invent it and create it, and years and decades, and to then share it, and now it's there. And I'm hearing that it's worth that. It's worth the vulnerability. It's worth the many wrong tries. It's worth.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we've got a couple of comments. Do you want to pull
Oh,
those
I
up?
missed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Where are they? Oh, they're down in the little blue dot. Oh, oh, beautiful. I'll just share them.
Yeah.
So Victoria says listening deeply can be a vulnerable experience.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of what I may hear sometimes, but I guess that's when I can start working with what I am hearing and feeling. That's what I'm thinking. Yes. And thank you for saying that. I'm afraid of what I may hear. Yes. How simple it is. I'm just putting words in your mouth, but for me, how simple it is, or that I love something that someone else doesn't love. And Victoria is also saying, um, I like what you said about the value of being an artist. Being an artist does not always mean we're creating art for others. We can do it for ourselves, and there is value in that. Yes, and thank you for saying that, because that's a place to stand, to open up,
Yes.
to expand from, to allow. And I was thinking earlier about as people, when I find something that I love the sound of, and this is of course out of tune, but I love the sound of like that is a happy thing for me. and
Mm-hmm.
and and yet I don't share it. Why do I not share it? And yet I could, even just sharing that every day for myself.
Yeah. 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 I think that the greatest gift we can give the world is to be who we are. And of course, that is the heart of what Jung meant by individuation. He meant living the full expression of the uniqueness of who you are. And really taking the risk and having the courage to do that. So when any one of us does that, however we do it, it it seeds the collective consciousness to say we can do this. And the vulnerability that we feel when we listen deeply comes, I believe, because we cannot bypass who we are to become the great person we are. We have to deal with who we are to become the largest of who we are. And the way I say it in Jungian terminology is the only way to get to the larger self is to go through the personal unconscious. You have to deal with your shadow. I have to deal with my critical voices. I have to deal with my perfectionism. I have to deal with my rigid self. I have to deal with my insecurities. If I'm ever going to allow myself to truly do what it is that's mine to do, express those deepest passions inside of me and actually put them in the world, I've got to go through all of what I just named. And and it is vulnerable because those attitudes, voices, feeling states have had a lot of power. And they can still get reinforced by my own little nasty voice and by the outside world. Yeah.
Yes, and I would also like to say that every time when I first create something, it does not look the way I want it to. It looks small, and I always say this to people in the academy. Easy to say to them, harder to say to myself. Everything is born slimy.
Yeah.
Everything has that slime on it, is not born cute. And I want to remember that, and to listen to the beauty of that slime, that it means that it is come out. It is no longer in, it is out. If you can see the slime, it's out. That's what I'm going to look at this week.
That's right. And that it's one stage in the creative process, but it's a stage we have to go through consciously if the polished product is going to get there. And yes, only we
Yes,
can
I
tame
can
our
tame our
beast.
beast.
And being human is messy.
Right, right,
Absolutely. There's
right,
nothing clean about being human.
right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Wow. I know we need to end. And Victoria,
Yeah.
thank you so much and for being part of this conversation. And to everyone who comes up to us afterwards and tells us that you listen and that it makes a difference. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And Kathleen, thank you so much for going on this journey of curiosity and communication together and
I
where it
love
leads
it.
us.
Yeah.
And I look forward, we may not see you next week. I think you're at a retreat. Is that right?
Yep.
But
Yes.
we will see you the week afterwards. And there's plenty of episodes to go back and listen to in the meantime at
Yes.
Jung at HARP. Thank you so much. Go forth and harp on the great things and the expanded listening of everything.